What's going on, guys? Good morning, good morning, good morning. Happy Friday. Friday at last. This week has absolutely just flown on by. The age of the vibe shift. In the age of the vibe shift, time moves differently. How are you guys doing this morning? Welcome to the ASTROLABE, brought to you by King Pilled. Got some good stuff for you guys today. Audio is low. Indeed it is. Hold on. All right, how's that? That should be better. No idea why this happens. This little Shure sound transmogrifier thing. I don't know what it is. I don't speak music nerd. I don't know why. It just randomly cuts its own volume in half, and I just always have to fix it. I just bought myself an on. Never tried an on before, so got the 8 milligram wintergreens. Now I've got to try to figure out how to open it. It says open here, but I don't see what. Is it just a little like pop top thing? Oh yeah, it is. Oh, that's pretty nifty. Okay, that works. All right. Duffhead says they're gross. Oh well. Well, if I discover that they're gross, I'll learn it the hard way. I always have to learn everything the hard way. What'd you guys think of the RNC last night? That was an experience. I didn't get to watch the first part of it live. I was doing the show here, and then I went down and spent a little time with family. And then I went over and hopped on the Pony Express radio with the old Glory Club and talked with them for a little while with Pete Quinones, and we had a good time. And then we watched Trump's speech live, and holy shit, man! The first 30 or 40 minutes of that was just absolutely transfixing. The most surreal public speech that I've seen given in my life. Like not just politics, like any sort of public speech. All public speeches are inherently kind of political in a way, but this one was just he's definitely a different Trump. I've got some stuff in the stack here today for talking about the change in Trump. But he's definitely a different Trump, and yet at the same time he's the same Trump. In some ways everything has changed, and in other ways none of it has changed. We've been saying this here for a little bit now that this is a spiritual moment. To understand what's happening right now, you need to be spiritually sensitive. I saw Andrew Torba from Gab said the same thing either last night or this morning. He tweeted you have to have a spiritual intuition to be able to really understand the magnitude of the different things that are happening. The way Trump mentioned Barron, he knows. He knows. They are fully aware of the memes. And Trump is very happy to run with them. He says, "Barron, we all love our Barron." That's right. Oh man, the whole thing has just been surreal. I've got some stuff here today to talk about the RNC and some of the stuff talking about the vibe shift and Trump. So I'll kind of save my comments for right now. But obviously the big story today is this outage, this global outage, because of some security update or something like that. We're dog sitting for some people right now. That was what I had to do after Trump went for 95 minutes yesterday, finished up just before midnight, and then I had to go over and hang out with the dog for a little while, which gave me time for catching up and shit posting. But so this is the story now. There's this global outage that's happening. And I don't really know anything about it. It's like whatever. This is for the nerds to solve, and I'll just listen to as many of them as I can to make sure I know when I need to move, make a move. But I did see just this morning some commentary on it. First of all, the name CrowdStrike is very interesting. That CrowdStrike is coming up. I'm like, I know that name. I've heard of CrowdStrike. Do you guys remember CrowdStrike? This is where we heard about it before. Taylor Brown says, Jeet update, crash world, stonk go down. Yeah, right. The Russian hacking investigations. This is just a whole new world. This is way back in the yesteryears of when was this? Come on. Yeah, March 20, 2017. So CrowdStrike helped investigate the Democratic National Committee cyber attacks and a connection to Russian intelligence services. So CrowdStrike was integral to the launching of Russiagate. On March 20, 2017, James Comey testified before Congress stating, CrowdStrike, Mandiant, and Threat Connect reviewed the evidence of the hack and concluded with high certainty that it was the work of APT 28 and APT 29, or Apartment 28 and 29, who are known to be Russian intelligence services. Comey previously testified in January of 2017 that a request for FBI forensics investigators to access the DNC servers was denied, saying ultimately what was agreed to is the private company, CrowdStrike, would share with us what they saw. Now, I remember hearing a lot about CrowdStrike and people doing some really deep dives in their corporate structure and everything, and the people involved in them and the different stuff they've done. I don't remember all of it now. This was freaking 8 years ago. I was a completely different person. We lived in a completely different world. But it's revived my interest in it. And when I have 30 seconds to sit down and catch my breath, I'm gonna try to dig in a little more and see what's going on behind this, especially if there's any sort of persistence to it. Because I think knowing that connection in the back, like in the past, that makes the timing of this very interesting. It's got my bullshit sniffer perked up. I suspect there's some kind of bullshit that's happening, and this is another I don't know. This is another one of these things where is it truly incompetence, or is it not? Is it weaponized incompetence, malevolent incompetence? It's beginning, they're too stupid to do anything on purpose. This is becoming a I don't know, a theme, a repeating theme, that these really bad things keep happening, but it's more and more evidently a product of gross incompetence being weaponized by a few malevolent actors. I think that would be my assessment of, in particular, the events of last Saturday. I think it's gross incompetence weaponized by a few malevolent actors, a small number. But what I did just see here is in 2020, CrowdStrike acquired zero trust and conditional access technology provider Preempt Security for $96 million. In February 2021, the company acquired Danish log management platform Humio for $400 million, with plans to integrate Humio's log aggregation to CrowdStrike's XDR offering. Later that November, they acquired Secure Circle, a SaaS-based cybersecurity service that extends zero trust endpoint security to include data. In December 2021, the company moved its headquarters location from Sunnyvale, California to Austin, Texas. In 2023, CrowdStrike introduced CrowdStream service in collaboration with Cribble.io. The names just keep getting dumber. Jesus Christ. CrowdStrike joined the S&P 500 index in June of 2024. In 2023, they acquired Israeli cybersecurity startup Bionic.ai. In 2024, they acquired Israeli startup Flow Security. I mean, yeah. I don't think this is simply incompetence. I think that I think the reputation for incompetence here is a feature, not a bug. But this is me entirely going off of intuition from a few data points. So I'm going to see if I can get do a little more digging into this when I get a chance. This is a reminder. This weekend, that reminded me, because I need to get through this weekend, so then I can take a breath and try to dig into a few things. I've got a whole bunch of stuff people have sent me that I need to watch and give responses to, and but I need to have a few hours free during the day. This weekend, it's Saturday at 3 p.m. Anyone who's in the Austin, Texas area, or San Antonio area, or Dallas area, I don't know how far Houston, anywhere. If you're interested in traveling for a poker tournament, we're going to be hosting a pretty cool one. It's going to be in Dripping Springs. $250 buy-in, $5,000 minimum pot. This is some guys. This is my IRL job. I'm working with some guys. We're in the process of starting up. We're going to be doing regular poker tournaments. We're also going to be doing. We're going to be opening a poker card house here in the area in the near future. So this is what I'm doing. When I'm not doing this, I'm working on that. It's tons of sweat equity. Hoping it's going to pay off here in the near future. This particular event, this is going to be our first launch with a partner bar up in Dripping Springs called 12 Fox Brewery. It's a military, very heavily military populated bar, big military community there, and the owners wanted to have some kind of a poker thing. So we got connected with them. One of the guys that I work with is involved in Victory for Veterans, a great charity that's actually working to end veteran suicide and provide support for veterans. And he's Orthodox, so that's how I met him. Got started up working with him. So it's a great community, great cause, and we're looking at having some good time. So anybody who's in the area, if you want to come out for that Saturday at 3 p.m. in Dripping Springs, just hit me up. You can send me an email at realkingpill@gmail.com. You can comment on the episode here, or you can tweet at me at realkingpilled, and I will give you the information to get signed up. Anyway, so I'll dig into CrowdStrike after this weekend. If this story just kind of blows over, it'll become less of a priority. But I suspect that there's things happening behind the scenes, and this was not simply just a scheduled update. And I think that's a good cover story. But there are, I'm sure, particular people who are happy for that cover story to run because it obscures the bigger story that's going on behind the scenes. This was the statement issued by the CEO of CrowdStrike. He says, this is George Kurtz. He says, CrowdStrike is actively working with customers impacted by a defect found in a single content update for Windows hosts. Mac and Linux hosts are not impacted. This is not a security incident or cyber attack. The issue has been identified, isolated, and a fix has been deployed. We refer customers to the support portal for the latest updates and will continue to provide complete and continuous updates on our website. We further recommend organizations ensure they're communicating with CrowdStrike representatives through official channels. Our team is fully mobilized to ensure the security and stability of CrowdStrike customers. This is, so here's the response. Why are you pushing an update Friday early morning? You sound like we should say sorry to you. That's very concise. That's very pithy. So I saw this when I was scrolling briefly this morning. This chick is a really good follow on Twitter. Lulu Chang Messervy. Founder of Rostra, ex-Activision and Substack, Trailrunner co-founder, writing at getflack.com. She does, I don't know if she's actively employed doing PR. What is Rostra? Let's take a look at this and see. Go direct to the manifesto. If you want something good, get it from yourself. Traditional PR is dead. Okay, yeah. The old PR playbook of relying on third parties with misaligned interests is obsolete. Communication is the founder's job. Go direct or go home. It's time to rebuild the rostra. At the center of Rome, as it transitioned from a republic to an empire, stood a speaker's platform from which the city's leaders would address the public directly. It was called the rostra, or rostra, I'm sure, so named because it stood atop the captured battle rams, or rostrums, of enemy warships. From here, speeches were given that would sway opinion, change regimes, and alter history. That physical structure has been lost to time, but we now have something much more powerful, a free and open internet with which to build a speaker's platform of limitless scale. All we need is the will to build it. The conventional way of communicating has its allure. Outsource your message, let some removed third party go through the motions of getting impressions, and spare yourself the risks and discomfort that come with putting your own name on the line. But that way is incompatible with greatness. Reject convention, build your own platform, build your own audience, and build your own narrative. Go direct. So she has her own PR firm. But there's a vibe shift here. This is a great example of this vibe shift. And this has been building for a while. So she's someone who's really traditionally just kind of part of like Silicon Valley culture. She comes out of the Gray tribe. But she's been very actively involved in our segments of Twitter. And this is a good example of someone who actually has some influence. She knows how to craft a tweet. She knows how to shift the narrative. I've been following her for a little while because she's a good shit poster, and she also makes a habit of posting things like this, where she breaks down the problem with his statement that he issues here from a business standpoint and from a social standpoint. So she says CrowdStrike CEO is getting pummeled for his response to the global outage. Why everyone hates it. 1. Weapons grade corpo speak. Let's be clear. Legalese doublespeak is designed to dodge and obfuscate rather than inform or communicate. This statement was obviously written by a committee of lawyers and middle managers whose only goal was to avoid legal risk and threats to their own job security. If you can't understand what the statement is even saying, it's working as intended. 2. No apology. The first word should be, I'm sorry. But you won't find that anywhere in this statement. nor the watered down, I take responsibility. Not even the Weasley, we regret. Nothing. It comes off as cowardly and callous. CrowdStrike caused an outage that took down airlines, a stock exchange, hospitals, and ICUs. People might have died. And the CEO is not sorry. 3, passive voice throughout. This is such a classic move to avoid accountability, it's even become a joke. Mistakes were made. This statement is almost comical in its efforts to dodge assigning responsibility. This issue has been identified. A fix has been deployed. Which issue? Global outage. Who caused the issue? You, CrowdStrike. What fix? I don't know. Did it work? I don't know. 4, dismissing customers. Don't bother us with your petty complaints of power going out in your local hospital. We refer customers to the support portal, and we further recommend customers ensure they're communicating with representatives through official channels. You, the customer, are bothering us and making our lives harder. 5, useless information. So many words, so little meaning. This statement says nothing useful. Not what the problem was, who caused it, what they learned, what the fix is, how long it might take, what they're working on, or anything at all. It assigns extra work to the customer by telling them to go through official channels, but does not then link to the official channels. The onus is on you, customers. If you want to learn more about how CrowdStrike has ruined your day, you go do the work. Oh, there's more to it. She says, number 6, woefully insufficient shits given. This statement conveys that the CEO thinks you're overreacting. Everyone, calm down. It was only a global outage that took down emergency rooms in the London Stock Exchange. In fact, not even that. It was a defect found in a single content update, and it was isolated. This outage knocked out 911 call centers and hospitals. People literally might have died. And the company's CEO is out here playing it down as if it's not a big deal. This is a really, really good illustration of... Someone might look at this and see this as just like a commentary on corporate practice or what have you. But this is actually at the heart of the regime. This dynamic where you get the CEO who comes in and just kind of does his stuff. He does whatever he wants, and he has this outsourced third party that manages all the communication. Where does that third party come from? Who staffs the PR departments? You've got PR, which is going to be populated by shitlibs, and you've got HR staffing PR, which is also going to be populated by shitlibs. And you've got these, whether they're malevolent or incompetent CEOs, it doesn't matter because the effect is the same. Yeah, powerful wizard, low-T corporate leaders. That's right. This is low-T corporate leaders, and the effect of it is the longhouse. We're being longhoused. And this woman identifies it. She recognizes the significance of this, and she's calling it out. I think this is a if you're listening to this, you need a PR expert. Reach out to Lulu Chang Miservi. She knows her shit, and she runs in our circles. She's very much involved. She's very much there's this everything that's happening right now, and there's some people that kind of understand what's happening. And then there's some people who just don't. She's very much one of the ones who does. This is another representative of this gray tribe. These people who are generally more like urbane libs culturally, who have existed in the higher levels of corporate America, or they're very familiar with that culture. They run in that culture. And yet they are not regime characters. They may not be full 14 words. They come from a whole different variety of backgrounds. But they want to live in much closer to the same type of world that we do. They want a competent, stable country. They want peace. They want economic prosperity. And I don't know her politics specifically. I'm speaking now generally to this type of culture. They still buy into a lot of they're very classically liberally inclined. They very much buy into the notions of free speech and tolerance and all these sorts of things. So they just want to go back to the 90s. Gray America wants to go back to the 90s and pick up where they left off before, as they see it, things went off the rails. But because they want to go back to the 90s, they're left with their only choice is to align with the people who want to go back to the 50s. Well, and the people who want to go back to the 50s are in such dwindling short supply that they're forced to take basically any ally they can get. So they're being dragged kicking and screaming with the people who want to go back to the 1850s and so on. But what unites this whole different coalition of people who are being emboldened and starting to actually see a vision of how we can move in a positive direction, what unites all of them is the fact that they're beginning to recognize we all need to sort out our differences and cooperate here, because this is going beyond just having like a crazy political party or having some like weird evil people influencing the system. This is like existential crisis. We're steaming off a cliff, and the time for little not immediately urgent factional disputes is like we can have those disputes later on. What we need to do is prevent the entire system from completely collapsing and steaming us off a cliff. This is where all the incentives are beginning to align. We want these people on our side. We want them advocating for our values. Even if it's not all of our values, at least some of our values or most of our values. We are stronger. We are better able to attain our values and protect our values when these people see us as allies. So to like stop, and it's kind of like, I don't know, here's a great example. There's an active shooter, and you want to sit around and argue about which direction we should run. Ideally, you would have had the plan mapped out ahead of time, but it turns out you didn't. It turns out we were lazy. We lost our influence in the culture. We became too passive, too withdrawn, too cynical, too nihilistic. We lost our influence. So now we don't have an escape plan charted. This means we just need to agree on something and go. Anybody who recognizes we need to escape, we need to agree on something and go. And then deal with the problems as they come up. This is a time for action. The person who sits there and says, well, wait, no, let's while we're huddled here on the stage, let's have a debate. Let's argue about which direction we're going to go. Let's like try to map out all the different things and say, well, if we go that way, then this might happen, and then this other thing could come in, and then we wind up in this place, and it actually would be better if we went this way because you see, there's this other. That person ought to be shot so that everyone else can move on without them dragging them back. Speaking metaphorically, of course. No fucking black pilling. This is our great president yesterday gave his own message implying no black pilling. I can't remember what he said off the top of my head. He said it wasn't be optimistic, but it was like have faith or be hopeful. Something along those lines. I hope you heard it. John says, reminder, in any system made by humans, there's always a point of total failure. Indeed, right. So identifying that there's a potential point of total failure in whatever given system is, you're stating the obvious. Yes, obviously, there are points of total failure. We must figure out how to avoid that point of total failure. But some of those problems can be solved later. Some of them need to be solved now. Your expectations aren't high enough. Yes. Set your expectations high. Be prepared to be let down, but set your expectations high. And when they're let down, set them high again. And when they're let down again, set them high again. Our leadership can only go as far as our expectations. They can't go beyond it. The only thing that enables them to go beyond it is us. So when you set your expectations low, you're actually guaranteeing that you're going to get a lower outcome. You're reducing the ceiling, reducing the possible ceiling on the outcome. This doesn't mean be blindly optimistic or be idealistic or be utopian. We have to be able to walk and chew gum at the same time. You have to be able to be intentionally, purposefully optimistic and hopeful and projecting a positive future while recognizing that it's very obvious that there are plenty of things that will prevent us from reaching that. But you have to believe it's possible to surmount them before you can even deal with the problem of surmounting them. All of the black pillars, all of the counter signalers, they're revealing who they are. They may be sincere. I suspect they sincerely believe what they're saying. That doesn't matter. You are sincerely wrong. And you are having a sincerely bad effect on people. No fucking black pilling. Counter signalers will be blocked. Counter signalers will be deported. What kind of American are you? If you're black pilling, you're not my kind of American. We're in a battle for America in a very real sense, like what America is going to mean. And there's certain people who are willing to destroy America if it's not going to be the thing they want it to be. That makes you worse than the thing that you're trying to avoid. Whatever thing you're sincerely concerned about that you're trying to avoid, and you think that you're honestly addressing a problem that you legitimately see, you are worse than whatever the problem is that you're trying to address. You're spiritually toxic. We don't want you around. All right, let's get a couple of bangers here, and then we're gonna get into some good stuff. I've had this one in the hopper for a while, and it's very worthwhile. Here's the time where we demonetize the stream. Big vibes. Eric Winter says, oh, they don't want to kill me. Great. Yes, he says I have a pretty low bar. I agree. I have a very low bar. Hey, these people don't want to kill me. I can work with them. While I'm working with them, I'm going to find people who want to kill me even less. And then I'm going to work with them. The first step to winning is believing you can win. Failure is a signal to rebuild. This is where we find ourselves in the culture. Are you an American or Americant? That's great. Are you an American or are you an Americant? Personally, I'm an American. Yes, we can. Can we build it? Yes, we can. Every single time. Okay. Another one. This European mind is starting to comprehend. Last night, okay. Academic agent had to have been, I think he probably passed the 4 hours last night where you need to call you need to call a doctor. The kayfabe is just next level. What we're seeing here is the Republican Party embracing the fact that professional wrestling and politics are the same domain. I tweeted last night that Trump's incoming administration is going to be the absolute apotheosis of kayfabe. And that's going to be a positive thing and a negative thing. Like, obviously, lots of it is very corny. It's very performative. It has the it can have the vibe of being inauthentic. Yet at the same time, it's incredibly authentic. If you're watching that RNC last night, you were cringing. You gotta have a little introspection here, because you claim to love American culture. You claim to love the working class white man. You claim that these are your people, but you are performatively demonstrating that they're not. Even if you came from there, you see, like J.D. Vance, he came from that world. He went and joined the elite America, but he's retained his love and his identification with that region. If you're counter-signaling what the RNC was doing yesterday, the Hulk Hogan, the Dana White, the Lee Greenwood, you're indicating that you are spiritually still a member of the regime. You actually have a contempt for white American culture. It is what it is. It's either yours or it's not. If you don't like it, you're indicating the extent to which you're not part of that culture. Which is fine. You don't have to be part of that culture. But you can't claim that that is the thing you're advocating for, that that's the thing that you want, if when it hits you in the face, you recoil from it. There is nothing more distinctly American than Lee Greenwood singing God Bless the USA as Trump walks out on the stage. There is nothing more distinctly American than Hulk Hogan ripping his shirt off and saying, "Let Trump mania make America great again." The European mind was imploding last night. They cannot comprehend it. There is no other culture in the world that can comprehend it like an American can. If you imagine that you were at a VFW rally or something, that's what it was. Every single person who was there was having the time of their life. Tucker came out and talked about how much fun this is. That's not historically Tucker's culture, but he recognizes how distinctly American it is. And he loves America, and he wants America to exist and to thrive. And he recognizes his status as an elite and that it's his responsibility to love and cherish and advocate for these people. That was American culture. That's not a that was good or that was bad. It's an objective fact statement. That's a political party advocating for distinctly American culture. If you think it's cringy, you have two options. One, recognize that's not my culture. My culture is urbane, blue, coastal cities. Your other option is, this is my culture, but I don't like these aspects of it. So it's my responsibility to ingratiate myself and value these people and guide them in, as a mentor, a servant, guide them to what I think is better. But it is not your place to be hostile to them if you think you are opposed to the regime, because that's the defining characteristic of the regime, is its hostility to traditional American culture. Got 65 watching and 21 likes. Do me a favor and hit the like button, folks. Here is an American who's starting to get it. The European mind is starting to comprehend.
I've been driving for 5 minutes now and I can't wipe this smile off my face. I'm driving a Ram truck in America. Like, look how sick this is. Country music on the radio. Go on. I'm going to Hooters in a Ram truck in America, boys. Yeehaw! Praise for freedom. I've been driving for 5.
I don't care if he's memeing. That's fucking cool. I'll take the limey. I'll take the limey that does this. And I gotta sneeze. Ooh, excuse me. I'll take the limey that digs American culture. Even if he wants to meme it and he wants to meme it authentically, I'll take it. Need to replace that techno country song. Yeah, having Avicii playing over that was not a great choice by whomever mixed this. Okay. Got another funny one here. This one's been going around a lot. I've had a bunch of people send it to me, so I'm going to assume everyone's digging it, and we'll play it, because laughing is good.
You can take my ears, but you cannot take my liberty. They want to cut off my ears like the Taliban, but what they don't know is my ears can grow back like SpongeBob through budding, by the way.
Budding.
Hit me with your best shot, why don't you? Because if that's the best you got, you're a loser. You're such a loser, you missed so bigly. By the way, you had a big opportunity. You could have made my head blow up on TV, but you didn't do that, did you? Now my ear is going to grow back bigger and better. It will have better hearing. I will hear like an owl. You can take my ear.
It's great. It's great seeing. I've seen so many different Trump impressions coming out lately. This is part of it going mainstream. Like, these are impressions that are coming out that are not just this one necessarily, but just in general. Like Shane Gillis doing Kill Tony did his debate with Biden, and like, this is Trumpism is going mainstream. The mainstream has departed. Trumpism is going mainstream, and it's not going back. It's not going away. Yesterday, during Trump's speech, John Podhoretz, the archetypal neocon himself, was publicly castigating Never Trumpers for being like preening and insufferable. He was like, dude, read the room. The one of the men least capable of reading the room of all time was saying, read the fucking room. Jonah Goldberg was doing it too. He was like, he said it was objectively, it was brilliant and objectively like mesmerizing or transfixing. Shane Gillis' one was phenomenal. Yeah. Even they are reading the room. And if you say, oh, well, they just sense power. They're moving where power is. Yeah, exactly. That's exactly the point. The most craven power seekers, the biggest snakes on the planet, they know power, they can smell it, and they're pivoting. The more loudly you countersignal Trump because of that, the more you do their bidding. Them being your enemy means you must focus on something above and beyond them. If you're focusing on them, you're doing their bidding. You're amplifying them. Now is your time to disempower them by taking what they're doing and creating the narrative about it. Look at this. Trump is so awesome, he's even pulling them in finally. His mortal enemies. They see no alternative except for acquiesce to him and then try to get inside and try to subvert to whatever way he can from the inside. Call it out directly for what it is, but don't fucking blackpill about it. This is a good thing. We can make it a good thing. If you perseverate on it and blackpill about it, you're just taking a good thing and turning it into a bad thing. Don't be a useful idiot. John said if your truck does less than 10 miles per gallon, you're definitely an American. Damn straight. Oh, euthanasia, we're going to have to fight. Ditch the Ram. No, man. Nah, this is Ram country. Biden just announced he's pulling from the 2024 presidential bid. Go figure. Is that true? Is this actually announced now? Is it no longer a rumor? It's actually been announced. Euthanasia says, imagine being beat down for decades to the point where new up-and-comers can't remember how to power politic. There was another thing in here I wanted to highlight. Let me see if I can find it. Pete Quinones. Shout out to Pete in the chat. He says, a lot of, quote, right-wingers exposing themselves as rootless cosmopolitans. That is the banger of the day, folks. Rootless cosmopolitanism has infected the so-called right wing. And it's the people who most loudly advocate how right-wing they are. They're the ones who really lean into a lot of the edgy aesthetics. But when the rubber meets the road, they reveal themselves. The ones who yell the most about rootless cosmopolitanism, it turns out, are themselves rootless cosmopolitans. Chrysler products are objectively terrible. Yeah, but they all are. They're all objectively terrible. I'm a Ram guy because I drive one. That's why. Josiah says blackpilling is a ferocious feedback loop. The screeching when the mic is too close to the speaker. You need to not be speaking loosely on the basis of observations alone. Order yourself. Yes. Yes. It's good to see you guys are on the same page. Here's some great shit posting from the Trump campaign. This was in the long before times of 2 days ago. Bill Malugin, national correspondent for Fox News based in LA. He says, new Trump campaign responds regarding vice presidential debates. Quote, we don't know who the Democrat nominee for vice president is going to be, so we can't lock in a date before their convention. To do so would be unfair to Gavin Newsom, J.B. Pritzker, Gretchen Whitmer, or whomever Kamala Harris picks as her running mate. This is great shit posting. What's been great about the way the Trump campaign and the DNC, the way that they have allowed the Democrats to just absolutely dangle. They are squirming and dangling, and thus far, no one's giving them a bailout. Nobody's offering them an opportunity. I remember when Chip Roy, right after the debate, Chip Roy from Texas was like, we need to start the 25th Amendment proceedings. We need to get him out of there. And everyone was like, bro, shut the fuck up. And it worked. At least to this point. There was here was the Con Inc. of old stepping up to throw a life preserver to the regime and just disappeared. So there is a role to countersignal in a direct way to someone who is directly compromising what's happening. Someone who's directly trying to facilitate the regime, there is a role for that. But you have to have the fucking wisdom to recognize when it is and when it isn't. I think I have some stuff in the chat here in the stack here for regarding the scrambling happening with the DNC. If somebody could confirm for me in the chat let's see. Yeah, that Joe Biden officially pulled out. If somebody could give me absolute confirmation on that, I can't go look it up right now. But obviously it's been rumored, and there's been lots of things rumoring it. And you could tell this is all a coup happening within the DNC. They're 100% not on the same page. You've got the elected officials who have made their peace with Trump being reelected. They're concerned about their own electability now. And you've got the power brokers who are split between, do we just embrace Trump and seek to recognize our outer party status? Like, we would rather be the outer party than cast out of the city altogether. So we're just going to sit down. We're going to accept our outer party status and move forward and try to adapt on the fly. And then there's the others who are like, no, look how well he's polling. Don't buy into the vibe shift. Because they recognize that buying into the vibe shift, whether or not it's true, makes it true. This is what you have to understand. This is what they're so good at. They recognize when there's been a vibe shift and they go full court press. They go balls deep into it and they manifest it. We can do the same thing. We have to transcend the autism for a period of time. We had our time for autism. The autists need to take a back seat, or they need to learn how to not be 100% consumed by their autism. Now is the time for pressing the advantage. CNBC 1 hour ago, Joe Biden will not drop out. So not official yet. I'm still with Vivek on this. I think that he's going to be forced out. I wouldn't be surprised if it winds up being some sort of compromise thing like I saw people talking about yesterday. They were saying, what did they say? They said that he is, like, he's going to remain the candidate, but if he wins, he's going to step down for Kamala. I wouldn't be surprised if they kind of try to do something like weaselly like that. But it's not going to fly. Everyone's going to be like, okay, so we're electing Kamala. And you're just like not giving us a vice presidential candidate. So we're voting for Kamala, but we are not voting for a vice president. That, and to the Democrat base, like, that's something that's going to matter. So they are scrambling. Okay, so a changed Trump. This is from Politico. Politico's putting out a lot of like Politico seems to be one of the mainstream rags that most recognizes the vibe shift and is seeking to pivot along with it. A changed Trump. Some allies detect an existential shift after the shooting. The question is how long it lasts. Interesting that the libs are asking that question, and so are the rootless cosmopolitans, claiming to be right-wing. I really, really think that it's a missed opportunity to not just have a really subtle little MyPillow logo on here. It could be a shout out to Mike Lindell, who has been vindicated just more than just about anybody else. In the days since he survived a would-be assassin's bullet, Republicans who have observed and spoken with former President Donald Trump say they have detected a new softness to the man whose brand has been anything but. There have been many moments since Trump first entered the presidential conversation in 2015 that political observers have predicted a pivot in his fundamentally bombastic political persona. After his election in 2016, after his first speech to Congress in 2017, or at points during the COVID pandemic. And at this particular juncture, Republicans would seem to have a vested interest in projecting Trump as a more reflective, subdued version of himself after his polarizing rhetoric during his presidency turned off many swing voters. But GOP allies in roughly a dozen interviews used words like emotional and serene and even spiritual to describe Trump in the days since the attempt on his life. A person close to the former president's family described him as taking on, quote, humility in the biblical sense. In moment after moment at the Republican National Convention this week, Trump's usual resting face, a scowl with squinted eyes, was replaced by a more subtle expression. One Republican who spoke with Trump, granted anonymity to describe private discussions, said he seemed, quote, existential. Which, I mean, you take a shot to the head, and it's not it's not surprising that would have an effect on a man. A question remains of whether Trump's personal response to his near-death experience will last, and if his calls for national unity will mark any real enduring shift within the GOP. A couple of people pointed out yesterday that it was very obvious in the speech that he was giving that this was not just pandering to the base. This was him giving a Trump rally speech to America. He was catering the conversation to all Americans. This is him accepting the nomination at the RNC. But he was directing his message to all Americans. I don't know if that was a pivot. You know, he said he scrapped his old speech and he's going with a new one. I don't know if part of the new one was that focus. You know, he recognizes politically that them taking a shot at me and me surviving, and then me fist pumping, all of that, like reflecting on that in hindsight, man, all of this worked out well. I just won the election. So now I need to begin campaigning for the entire country. Everyone's been talking about how it's become apparent that people are just treating him like the president, like he is already the president. This is what the rank and file elected officials in the DNC are beginning to do. Just treat him like he's the president already. Just accept it. Tucker Carlson mentioned this yesterday. Said something like when it happened, like, that's the president. Like, he's the leader. He's the national leader. This is what a leader is supposed to do, is give courage to his people and inspire them and uplift them. Make them optimistic. Make them hopeful. This is what a leader does. And Trump is the American leader right now. He has been since he came on the scene. He is at the forefront, and everything else is revolving around him. His moves dictate everyone else's moves. There are signs the former president is far from a completely new man. Trump in recent days has already reverted back to his longtime instincts on social media, sounding not much like a statesman as he fired off posts criticizing Supreme Court proposals that President Joe Biden is weighing as an effort by the radical left Democrats and communists. And he decried the series of criminal and civil cases against him as the January 6th hoax in Washington, D.C., the Manhattan DA's zombie case, the New York AG scam, and more. But Trump, since the shooting, has also uncharacteristically leaned into the notion of faith and divine providence, lending credence to allies' private claims that he is engaging in deep reflection. He wrote on Truth Social that it was God alone who saved him from death Saturday and urged the country to remain resilient in our faith, signing his post with an emoji of prayer hands. Representative Jim Banks, Republican from Indiana, who sat with Trump in his friends and family box on Tuesday, said Trump appeared changed. The reality of it, as I sat next to him for an hour and a half, there were a number of references to faith in God, and he was very moved by those, Banks told Politico. The extent of the shooting's effect on Trump's tone will be on display on Thursday night. While campaign officials have not disclosed the specifics of his nomination acceptance speech, Trump said that after Saturday, he decided to change his remarks from something extremely tough that focused on alleged Democratic corruption. See, what this is, the change that he made here is called talking past the sale. When you're selling something to someone, there comes a point where you just begin talking as if they've already purchased it. Because you're applying social pressure and making them begin to imagine themselves having already purchased it, which makes it much easier to actually purchase it. So this is the sentiment behind it's supposed to be not mentioning Biden's name once, and then while he was riffing, he slipped up and mentioned it, and then proceeded to highlight a bunch of times how he was only going to say it one time, trying to recover it, which is very Trumpian. You could see the authenticity there. Like he's not carefully crafted. You're seeing him for exactly what he is. The reason he's not going to mention him is, number one, because there's a lot of doubt whether he's actually going to be the candidate. So you don't want to spend your whole time focusing on the guy who's not going to be the candidate. But also because you're selling past the sale. Why talk about the loser? I've already won. Reince Priebus, the former RNC chair and Trump's first White House chief of staff, said that when he spoke to Trump on Sunday, the former president sounded very low-key. I heard someone who was grateful, who recognized the miracle, who very quickly brought up the fact that someone had died, Priebus said. And it isn't just Trump. While some Republican officials at this week's convention kept up their scorched earth attacks on Democrats, other party leaders pleaded for a change in rhetoric. And some believe it could take effect, at least to a small degree. CNN just now, Biden says he'll be back on the campaign trail next week. Oh my God, it could not be going better. 2-Bit Podcast says literal convos happening at dinner tonight with very blue-pilled normies who are already trying to accept that Trump has won. Yes, indeed. So more on Trump as the man of destiny, and then we'll get into a little bit about the circular firing squad that is the DNC right now. Got an interesting thing that dropped yesterday about DOJ filing a brief opposing efforts to FOIA the Biden-Hur recording. And then we're going to talk about, Jason Whitlock did a long thread talking about Amber Rose, Matt Walsh, and the RNC. We're going to discuss that. And then I've got a couple of articles to run through with you guys. Something by Tyler Cowen about the vibe shift that Naval Ravikant signal boosted. And then we're going to wrap it with two longer threads. One of them is a long post from Eric Weinstein, where I think he makes some interesting observations while also revealing himself to be Eric Weinstein. And then Kofafi Anon, Powerful Mutual, offered his response to it. And lastly, there's a really interesting conversation about the women in politics issue. It was a long essay written by Luke Weinhagen about insurers and deciders. So that's how we're going to proceed with the rest of the show. It's going to be another long one, folks. The content is flowing. So Orrin McIntyre, good friend of the show, says NS Lyons as Trump as a man of destiny. I have no idea who NS Lyons is. Let's look this up real quick. Okay, Substack, 35,000 plus followers, author of The Upheaval. Okay, so looks like he's a Substacker. Got a bunch of our guys following him, chronicling the shared upheavals of our era. The world spirit on a golf cart, autonomy and the automaton, castaway illusions and prepare for struggle, the foundation of American folly. The right's future must be parallel and counter-revolutionary. Huh. I'm going to subscribe. Okay. Let's open this. So this is NS Lyons. He says, and when he emerged, shaking off his bodyguards and streaked with blood, to stand and pump his fist in defiance beneath the American flag, as captured by a photographer who just happened to be there at the perfect place and time to reveal an era-defining symbolic image. Sidebar, apparently the photographer who took that photo was also the photographer who took the famous photo of George Bush being alerted about 9/11. Do with that what you will. This was rightly described by odd watchers in the stands and across the nation as epic. Maybe epic is the word that comes to their mind only because it's become internet parlance for cool shit. But I suspect that they may mean more than that they may be attempting to describe the deeper charisma of someone who really seems to somehow have become a man of destiny, and that they intuited the scene as truly epochal in its meaning. I've written before that I suspect we're in a period of change, the equivalent of which the world hasn't seen for 5 centuries. That the upheaval we're seeing is not just the tumult of politics and geopolitics as usual, but the wider breakdown of Enlightenment liberal modernity. And it seems that Trump, like Hegel's Napoleon, has somehow become a concentrated symbol of these times, of a world spirit of a global rebellion, of the end of one epoch and the birth of another, and that he is a figure with an historic role that must be fulfilled for better or worse come hell or high water. If so, it feels obvious in retrospect why we couldn't have Ron DeSantis or whoever else, as I originally would have preferred, instead of the great orange one. Why it had to be Trump versus Biden and no one else. Because history has somehow become, quote, connected to his own person, to occur and to be resolved by him alone. Even every obsessive word and action of Trump's enemies in their years of raging over his person seem as if pointed to this looming denouement. You may, of course, think all this sounds like irrational nonsense, that Trump wasn't saved by destiny but just got lucky again. And maybe he was. Frankly, it doesn't matter in the slightest, however. Trump, as concentrated mytho-historical symbol, will still function just as powerfully to change the world regardless of logic. I'm afraid the world really is just weird like that sometimes, and at this point, we should probably just come to terms with it. He's highlighted, this last paragraph is perfect. He's highlighting what I was saying, what Andrew Torba's been saying, what many have been saying, that this is a spiritual time, and you must have a spiritual sense about you. Even if it's just a glimmer, listen to that glimmer. Feel the vibe. Tap into the frequency. Whatever analogy helps you figure it out. There's a radio station playing that people are beginning to listen to, and they're beginning to recognize this is the most important radio station. This is the radio station that dictates all other radio stations. And you need to tune your receiver to pick up that frequency. If you don't, you'll get bogged down in silly autism. Like, oh, this is not a man of destiny. That's it's just he got lucky, and you just Trump, and then he's capitalizing on this because he's got great political instincts, and that's the unconstrained autism. The autism needs to be constrained. If that is true, even if it's true, granting that it's true, the effect is the same. This is the reality of spiritual things. The spiritual world and the material world are not separate from one another. These aren't separate worlds. They aren't distinct domains. It's one domain. And you can take this as data coming in from different vectors. But that data is all interconnected. The physical, the material, is the metaphysical, the non-material. The non-material, the metaphysical, is the physical and the material. In this sense, the people who don't grasp this, the ostensibly right-wing guy, the Gunic, who doesn't grasp this, is indicating that his mind is still trapped within the Enlightenment paradigm. And so even the shitlib who is getting on board is more spiritually in tune than he is. He wants to yell about Jewish billionaires backing Trump, and those Jewish billionaires are more spiritually in tune than he is. What does that mean? You got to grapple with that. Cool dude. Total king-pilled vindication on the PayPal Mafia theory. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Kate says, I almost thought it was going to say that the same photographer that captured the firefighters hoisting the flag at Ground Zero. That would have made my heart stop. I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised if he was involved in that. He seems to have been very involved in many things. Okay, making sure there aren't any more updates coming. Do me a favor, if there is some major update of something that happens, drop it in the chat, and I'm gonna try to keep an eye. Hold on a second. Getting a text from, I just saw it come through. Okay, just making sure. All right. So let's go on to Chris Hayes. Now we're really going back. This is a deep cut from 3 days ago. Chris Hayes, just the apotheosis of shit libbery. Yet, he's always been someone who, while being very much a part of the new guard within the DNC, very much like an AOC Obama lib, he's always kind of like he's gotten the right wing a little bit better. Like you could tell like he kind of gets he's very much bad faith in that you could tell he really gets this stuff and he still has to try to force his framing around it. Oh, this is good. Pete Quinones, the people won't understand that photographer may be a man of destiny. That's a really good point. Yes. Taylor Brown, Rachel Maddow's girlfriend, that Chris Hayes? Yes, that's the one. He says something underappreciated in the discussions of Vance and his ilk is the degree to which, yes, his ideological transformation is opportunistic, but also I think he and huge swaths of the modern right really have self-radicalized largely online and are constantly imbibing all kinds of genuinely monstrous, insane, and bizarre ideas and have come to believe them. So he's saying clearly that this is not that we, our guys who are becoming the mainstream, he's saying that this is authentic, that this is sincere. He still says, oh, well, this is very bad. This is actually much worse. But he actually sees it clearly. A big part of modern right-wing culture is this frisson. I've never even heard this word. Fission? No. Yeah, frisson. 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 A sudden, strong feeling of excitement or fear, a thrill, a frisson of excitement. Well, look at the high verbal IQ on this guy. A big part of modern right-wing culture is this frisson of the illicit, the reading of this or that writer or account who are outre in whatever ways. Fascists, race IQ obsessives, Holocaust denial adjacent, people with very weird sexual fixations and pathologies they turn into their own philosophy, etc. A lot of them, and I think this is true of Vance and definitely true of the creepy Silicon Valley MAGA weirdos, have simply pickled their brains. And then this was the part I wanted to highlight this. Popehead, would you like to read my 200-page essay on Hans Gunther? Brian Skinner says this is true of people of all ideologies, and he says, yes, you definitely see it in all places on the spectrum, but it's much closer to mainstream conservatism. Someone who's into the left version of Bronze Age pervert isn't ending up on the D ticket. And Kofethianon says the D ticket, on the other hand, only includes sane, sober people who want to start a nuclear war. And Seasonal Click Farm Worker says, I'd say the left version of Bronze Age pervert is Ibram X. Kendi, but that would be unfair to Bronze Age pervert. Great posting happening here. Harry Bergeron says, you don't realize how opposite of true this is because you're not capable of metacognition or self-reflection, and that is why mercilessly crushing you is entirely justified on altruistic grounds alone. Tactical Aesthete says, those into left version of Bronze Age pervert in terms of extremeness or degree of radicality include Congress people, senior staff at billion-dollar news orgs, every manner of director-level NGO and federal government sinecures, 4-star generals. Hillary Clinton wrote her thesis on Saul Alinsky. Deirdre Bell, deciding if I really want to Google Bronze Age pervert, deciding if this is actually necessary to my understanding of this political movement, deciding yes to both, but quickly closing the tab at the sight of the word manosphere. Not going to make it. The more the left can't meme and is fake and gay, and right-leaning Twitter is fun and interesting like this. Or it's more the left. I can't believe he didn't cry during Titanic. Do men even have feelings? Shinzo Abe saving Trump from beyond the grave memes. The memes are just phenomenal. This was a funny one from also 3 days ago. Katie Tur. Just one of the worst people in media. This may have ended her career within whatever the DNC is. This quote right here. The way that the libs absolutely fucking shrieked. You could see the demons looking at something good and shrieking at it.
When you have a near-death experience like he did where a bullet passes right by your head, and there's a picture to prove it. The New York Times caught a picture of the bullet going right past his head. I imagine that's going to change a person in a way that maybe nothing else can. It might change his tone. He might sound different on Thursday, maybe. But does it change his policy? When you have a near...
That simple observation alone provoked how Susan Collins of Katie Tur. Well, that's what imagining gets you. The rest of us know better. Nothing has changed. He will never change. He will just milk it and grift off of it. Katie Tur is beyond pathetic at this point. And this wasn't even like, this is Midas touch. This is just the video that I saw. Katie Tur was cast out. Nancy Pelosi bit her head off. They freaked out at the very mention of even taking this on its face, which is interesting because this is the sort of thing that can radicalize someone like Katie Tur. This is kind of a similar thing to what happened with, say, Megyn Kelly, where they're kind of like, I'm literally just observing what's in front of me right now. Like, can we even just talk about the facts of it and like weigh this in any sort of a responsible, level-headed manner? And it's just, Wah! It's, oh, okay, all right, fine then. I guess I'm gonna have to find somebody else who's willing to talk to me seriously about this thing that I want to take seriously. Colin says, for Jean, the tingly feeling you get when something emotional happens. What you feel when Aragorn says, for Frodo. Whew. Ha ha ha. Yes, Kate J says, Katie Tur, probably the next the left left me unironically. This is how it begins. It begins with little events like this. And sometimes they just get pulled back into the fold. It really depends on the actual constitution of the individual person. But someone like Megyn Kelly demonstrates how this sort of getting caught up in this sort of a thing can just radically alter a person. And when we see that, we need to endorse it. If she begins going to the left me, if she starts going the IDW direction or something, endorse that, encourage that. Yes, that's good. Now keep going. This is the same trajectory many of us took before we got here. Let's keep blowing through these here. This one was funny last night. Epic tweet. 15.3 million views. Shout out to this guy, Kevin Dalton. I tried fixing the system by working with the system. Now I'm doing it my way. Very vengeful son. 50,000 followers. I've seen him around before, but I can't remember why. Says Joe Biden was 83% sure this woman was his wife. Joe Biden was 100% sure Joe Biden was 100% sure this woman was his wife. Oh shit, oh shit, oh shit, oh shit, oh shit. Joe, get out of here. The real president steps in. Okay, so this is an interesting little thing that dropped yesterday, and TBD to find out what the implications of this are. But Kyle Cheney, senior legal affairs reporter for Politico, with a focus on 1/6 aftermath. While Trump was speaking, DOJ filed a brief opposing efforts to FOIA the Biden-Hur recording, Hur being the special counsel who did the investigation into Biden's classified documents case and released the decision that he was very obviously guilty of like multiple felonies, but he was, if you were to put him in front of a jury, they would see that he's just an old man who can't be held responsible for his actions. So the recording that's been widely reported as being, to the Democrats, absolutely blackpilling, that it's very clear that Biden is just completely senile. DOJ filed a brief opposing efforts to FOIA that recording, saying it could interfere with, quote, pending investigations and reasonably anticipated future investigations. That second line is very interesting. Reasonably anticipated future investigations. It says, introduction, there is no basis under the Freedom of Information Act to require disclosure of the audio recording of special counsel Hur's interview of President Biden. As established in the department's opening memorandum, the audio recording was properly withheld pursuant to multiple statutory exemptions. Because the audio recording is subject to the president's formal assertion of executive privilege. Ah, interesting. Now he can assert executive privilege. I'm sure Peter Navarro has some thoughts on this. It is covered by a recognized litigation privilege and consequently is exempt under exemption 5. It is also exempt under exemption 6 and 7C because of the unwarranted privacy harms that would result from disclosure without any meaningfully countervailing public benefit, particularly because a written transcript of the audio recording has already been publicly released. Finally, the audio recording is properly withheld under Exemption 7A because its disclosure would risk unjustifiable interference with law enforcement efforts, both in pending investigations and reasonably anticipated future investigations. What sort of reasonably anticipated future investigations would be compromised by releasing this? I have no idea. This is genuinely an open question. It's particularly notable because the written transcript has already been publicly released. So there's something that's substantial about the audio recording that could potentially compromise reasonably anticipated future investigations. So investigations that haven't been opened yet. There's also pending investigations that are going on that would be compromised by that. This is all very interesting. I mean, it's easy to say, oh, this is DOJ just trying to cover Biden's ass. But they're saying a lot of shit in here that also doesn't cover his ass. Full 61-page filing. What investigations does the DOJ have going in relation to Biden's illegal retention of classified documents that he illegally shared with his writer? That audio must be really bad. Wait a minute, there's a transcript of the interviews they claim is complete and true representation of the interview. How would the tape interfere in an investigation in a way the transcript would not? Unless comparing the two documents would reveal tampering or editing of an official court record. That would be actionable. If that's the case, if they're trying to avoid revealing tampering or editing of an official court record, then literally saying in this, literally like implying that question, is at least incompetent. Prior to Joe stepping down, the negotiation is on with Obama, Pelosi, Schumer, and Jeffries for pardons. That would be interesting. And that's why Biden won't be abdicating, folks. The pardon power. This is very interesting. We'll see if this turns into something, if it's just a nothing burger. But I do know there are a lot of things going on behind the scenes. There are many, let's say, many different phenomena, various cases, investigations, and such things that people were following them very closely for a long time, and then they kind of dropped off the radar. And so people aren't talking about them publicly, but there's still stuff going on. I keep seeing little blips of things. I'm kind of tapped into a bunch of little subcultures, and I keep seeing little blips of things popping up that make me go, But it's all still very speculative, so I'm not going to really get into it yet. If something changes, then I'll bring it to your guys' attention. I don't know if this is real, but I know that it is true. This chick apparently asked Grok, how many Trump rallies has CNN live streamed? Grok's response is, CNN has only live streamed one Trump rally this year, and wouldn't you know it, it happened to be on July 13th. Coincidence? I think not. I have my doubts that this was actually something that Grok produced, but it is true that CNN has only live streamed one Trump rally this year, and it was July 13th. We talked about the conspiracists, and there's two sort of parallel points I want to make here. We talked about this on the old Glory Club stream last night, so you can go back and watch that for more thoughts. But on one hand, the actual facts and the investigation into the actual facts and finding all these interesting little coincidences and creating attack vectors is necessary. Corey Mills, I played you guys the stream or the interview that he did the other day with the CNN reporter. Corey Mills talks about a J13 commission, which is just the parallelism there is just absolutely chef's kiss. A J13 commission. This J13 commission can become the equivalent of Russiagate in terms of its impact on the formerly ruling party once Trump is elected. If Trump is elected, if there's sufficient will, that J13 commission can become the key that opens all doors. It's very obvious that people are heavily implicated in this, whether by negligence or open explicit action. They need to be held accountable for the same reason that the Home Depot lady posting, Fed posting, needs to be held accountable. The reestablishment of the Overton window of acceptability, that needs to be enforced. And also there's a utility to this, that this becomes a bludgeon to bludgeon down every door. It's more than just a key. It's a, what are those like the big metal bar that they use to knock the door down. I just, like a battering ram. There's a specific name for it. I can't remember. So on one hand, yes, the conspiracies need to be ferreted out. They need to be amplified. All these little data points need to be drawn together and given to those who can actually work at chasing all of this down and creating the narrative. At the same time, there isn't any utility in just diving into these and obsessing about them and trying to find the truth. Trying to find the truth and tell everyone about the truth. We've never learned the truth to 9/11. We never learned the truth of the Warren Commission. These conspiracies have persisted. In the same way, this will persist as well. So you've got to have the spiritual wisdom to recognize where this behavior is useful, like in this case. Look at that. That's a very interesting thing. But don't spiral off down the rabbit hole and spend all of your time obsessing about the most black-pilling aspects of how this all secret things could have... Like the thing with the company that shorted Trump stock. And everyone's like, oh, look at this. They're connected to the Bushes and they've got all this stuff and everything. I don't know. I'm not a stonks guy, but I consulted with all the stonks guys that I know who would be very happy to see a connection like this. And they all said this is a nothing burger. Yet you've got the professional conspiracy theorists out there. It's very weird for me to be like talking critically about conspiracy theorists because I have always loved me a good conspiracy. I love the schizo streams. I feast on this stuff, but it's entertainment. You pick out the stuff that's relevant to you, but ultimately it's entertainment. It's fun. It's a hobby. It turns out that most conspiracy theories often wind up being true, or at least having a large element of truth to them, which is what makes sense because there's something true. There's something real out there that draws someone's attention and makes them go down that rabbit hole. So of course there's some truth in it. But there's now people who are just spreading like just completely inane stuff. And it makes you look like a retard. There's this one guy that's been he has this clip that he's been showing over and over again of how these people behind that are like the line of fire would be orthogonal to the bullet that hit Trump. And he's like, look, these guys, see, you can see this guy gets hit and then this guy gets hit and then this guy gets hit. And so from that, we can deduce the line of fire and we can determine the caliber and we can determine. And it's like one of the guys that you identified as being hit was not hit. Like, it's just a fact. Like, you could see him in the videos later standing around taking videos. He heard gunfire and hit the deck. He wasn't actually shot. It was coincidental that you had him go down and then this guy go down. Like, but this doesn't stop the guy. He just keeps posting the same thing over and over again. Magoo says, if figuring it out won't change what's important right now, does it even matter? And see, I think it matters to the extent that this can be formalized into an investigation that our guys can play a role in. It does matter to that extent. But making your entire identity about latching on to every single thing and not verifying any of it, but just running with it, all you do is work against us. This is exactly what I would expect like a disinformation operative placed among us to discredit us and try to work culturally against us. This is what I would expect them to do. So this goes into the counter signaler and the black pillar, the unhinged conspiracist. These are all birds of a feather. They must all go. What kind of American are you? If you're a black pillar, an unhinged conspiracist, or a counter signaler, you're not my kind of American. You aren't our guy. I don't care what you believe. $10 super chat from Cool Dude. Cold hard American cash. He says, your PayPal Mafia streams from months ago were quite prescient. I've sent them to a lot of people. Total kind-pilled vindication. Kind-pilled. I like that. I like that. Thank you, man. I appreciate it. That's a very appropriate typo. Okay. Continuing right along here. Let's get into this conversation about the DNC. Or sorry, the RNC. Freudian slip. First of all, let me pull open something, because I remember just when I went live here that we talked about this on the stream, the King Pilled stream we did about JD Vance's conversion, but we haven't talked about it on here, on the Astrolabe. So I want to bring it up now to remind you guys a quote from St. Paisios. Oh, come on. You guys are probably going to get really tired of me complaining about the Twitter bookmarks. If someone could do me a favor, and someone who has a larger platform than me could tell Elon that we desperately need the bookmarks folders to work. Like, if I put a tweet into the bookmarks folder, here it is. If I put a tweet into the bookmarks folder, I want to be able to go back and look at these bookmarks in the order that I put them in. And I want to see them all the first time that I scroll through. What happens is that as I'm scrolling down, it's like as it loads the ones further down, they don't just load like linearly. It populates in all sorts of random orders. So as I'm scrolling through, then it jumps down. So then I've got to go all the way back to the top and go back through again. And then it'll jump down again. I got to go all the way back. It just, anyways, my fellow streamers will appreciate the rant. Cool Dude says, kind pilled. Sorry, waging, so I had to type it fast. You're good, man. I appreciate it. Advice from Elder Paisios, now St. Paisios, on who to vote for. When some people went to visit the elder just before an election, they asked who they should vote for. And he replied, vote for the one you believe it is best, the one who loves God and our country. So he did not say, you shouldn't be involved in the political process. You should be focused on prayer and fasting. You should be giving alms. You should concern yourself with your own salvation. He didn't say that. He said, vote for the one you believe is best, the one who loves God and our country. So our country, we have a saint speaking positively about our country. Our country is a real thing that you have an obligation to, which shouldn't be surprising. This is the has historically always been the perspective of the church. Decline of the West says, is your work still available on Spotify? No newer episodes on Spotify. The one we did with JD Vance will be getting uploaded. It's just taking us some time to get that done. The Astrolabe does not go on Spotify. This is just a YouTube stream only. YouTube and X for now. So this is the place to get it. Otherwise, when we do interviews or if we do a one-off episode like the one I did with Cooper, we're reading through JD Vance's conversion story, those will get uploaded to the podcast feed. But for the time being, I don't have. I've got one guy who can work on this, and he's very busy as well. So it just takes us time to get everything uploaded, and he would be able to upload an episode every single day. John Lloyd says, made it. Astrolabe format for the win. Loving all the king pills. Glad to hear it, man. I appreciate you. So he says, vote for the one you believe it is best, the one who loves God and our country. They always gave the same reply. They're all the same, Father. This is, this should resonate. They're all the same. This guy's bad, evil, corrupt, degenerate, bad policies, whatever. Then he added, well, look here. All olive trees are the same. All of them are affected by the same disease called Dakos. However, some are affected 100% by it, others 80%, and others 50%. Since we are in need of olive trees, we have to look for the ones that are affected the least. When we go to vote, we should always bear in mind two things. So 2 things. A, how much the candidate loves God and is thus a conscious member of the church. And B, how much he loves his country and looks solely after its interests and not his own. So these are the metrics. When you're going to vote, these are the metrics. How much does the candidate love God and is thus a conscious member of the church? And how much does he love his country and look solely after its interests and not his own? If someone uses another criterion to vote, he is acting out of self-interest and is not behaving like a true Christian. Later on, divine justice will allow him to pay for his mistake. So it is a mistake to vote on a basis other than how much does the candidate love God and is a conscious member of the church, and how much does he love his country and look solely after its interests and not his own. And these are relative measures. Some are going to be 100% affected by the opposite of these things. Others will be affected 80%. Others will be 50%. So if, when you use these two metrics, you determine that one is 100% affected and one is 80% affected, you vote for the 80% affected one. We are still in need of olive trees. We are still in need of leaders. We are still in need of a government. The government will exist. It will be populated. We are in need of it. It will not go away. So when given the choice between 100% and 80%, take 80%. When given the choice between 80% and 50%, take 50%. A vote is not an absolute expression of your core virtues. You are not defined in perpetuity by your vote. When you're voting, you're making a decision, exercising your civic responsibility in this given moment with the options that are available to you in this given moment. You're not bound to your vote because you voted for this guy before. So if you have a 100% guy and an 80% guy, and this is, to be clear, this is like 100% bad and 80% bad, and you vote for the 80% bad guy. If next time there's an 80% bad guy going up against a 50% bad guy, you vote for the 50% bad guy. With that context, then, I want to address, first of all, a reply that I got from a friend, Chad account on Twitter. He's a good dude. He said, is there any part of you that is hesitant to jump on board and give such a firm stamp of approval on this degenerate anti-Christian RNC platform? I get that you're not putting full faith in the system to redeem anyone. It doesn't need to be that. The quote I just read, I think, should answer that. I'm giving a firm stamp of approval and putting full faith in them now, in this moment, given the context. It is abundantly evident you have to be completely spiritually blind and retarded to not recognize this. That's now. Does that mean I'm giving the assurance that every single, the utmost case of every single aspect of it is going to be achieved? No, of course not. The goal right now is get Trump elected, because the social consequences of getting Trump elected will be vastly, on a cosmic level, will be vastly better than the social consequences of whomever he's running against being elected. This is abundantly clear. That's now. Get Trump elected, and then, because we now have an administration that's close to our guys, that's influenceable by our guys, that's even open to being influenced by our guys, then we make the next moves. We keep the press on. Magoo says Trump is a catalyst, not a conclusion. Exactly. This is the beginning. This is the start. It's not the end. But it's a necessary step along the way. Jason Whitlock had a really interesting take on this. Before I share that, I want to share Josh Dawes. We've talked before about how, for example, with women, we talk about the woman problem. And we've made the point repeatedly that the woman problem is a man problem. The men are responsible for the women problem because men and women are not equal. So when the women are going out in the woods and screaming and hitting the ground with sticks and flailing around and ripping their clothes off and going nuts, when the women are becoming witches, this is a judgment from God on the men. Josh Dawes says, GOP, can we speak at your church? Christians, no. GOP, how about handing out voter guides? Christians, no. GOP, can you send some folks to volunteer? Christians, we serve only Jesus. GOP, donations? Christians, ha! GOP, okay. Christians. Why has the GOP abandoned us? The gayness of the GOP is a judgment on us. Jason Whitlock makes this point as only Jason Whitlock could. He says, a few thoughts on Amber Rose, Matt Walsh, and the RNC. For those of you who don't know, Amber Rose is a OnlyFans chick, has been a Satanist, Satan worshiper in the past. Not remotely the type of person you want representing your political movement in a Christian country. And she was brought in to speak at the RNC. So everyone, I think rightly, everyone recoiled from that. They found this revolting. He says, I agree with Matt's disappointment about Amber's invitation to speak. However, I think Matt is making a mistake expecting a political party to adhere to any moral values in a secular society. The political parties are a reflection of us. American society is controlled by our sex drive, our sexual identity. Sexual liberation is a tool for political control. It's a topic E. Michael Jones explores in the book Libido Dominandi. We have Jason Whitlock shouting out E. Michael Jones. After he interviewed E. Michael Jones and caught a bunch of shit for it, he don't give a fuck. With the invitation to Amber Rose, Republicans are executing good political strategy. In a secular society, women exercise an enormous amount of political influence by virtue of their vaginas. Matt is married and appears to be in a legitimate marriage. I have tremendous respect for Matt. However, he might have a blind spot as it relates to the real sexual politics destroying America. Black women control black men's voting through the power of a box more powerful than the ballot box. It's sad, but true. Support for Trump and Republicans greatly diminishes your ability to date black women. Access to black women is why so many black men have pretended they hate Trump. The same is true for white men who prefer dating liberal girl bosses. To keep peace at home, to afford lavish vacations and an extra 1,500 square feet living space, and to have regular sex with your wife or girlfriend, many white men have to pretend they love feminism, girl bosses, and Democrats. The left has owned the battle box. This is, if you have a problem with what he's saying, your problem is with the thing he's identifying, not with him. He is accurately identifying the reality of the situation on the ground. Amber Rose's job at the RNC was to tell women, black women in particular, to have sex with Trump voters. Only a slut could deliver this message effectively. In a dream scenario, the Kardashian sisters would have been keynote speakers last night, and Hawk Tuah Girl would close the convention with prayer. There's always 2028. This is the realpolitik. Amber Rose gave black women and sluts permission to do what has been strictly forbidden for 8 years and frowned upon for 60 years. I think he probably overstates the effect that Amber Rose is having, but I think the effect is there nonetheless. I'm not mad at the Republican Party for playing sexual politics. I'm mad at men for being so divorced from God, immoral, weak, and controlled by our small head that a rap whore had to play Cap and Save a Simp at a major political rally. A banger. This is my response to Dan Barnbro chat account. I endorse wholly what Jason Whitlock is saying here. This is a judgment on us. We don't have a Christian society right now. We need to recover a Christian society. There is one political party available that could possibly be a vehicle toward that end. We're fighting uphill. It's a major uphill battle. Perhaps it's Sisyphean. But the Republican, the RNC's responsibility is get Trump elected. Come hell or high water. They're going to do that. Regardless of how you feel about it. You don't have to endorse that decision specifically, and you should countersignal it. You should say, this isn't what we want. We understand why you're doing it. This isn't what we want. So you need to change in the future. We accept this decision now on the basis that it was made. But it's a bad thing. We don't want this. We don't want to be represented. We don't want to have to be represented by people like this. It was a bad thing when you had I said a Hindu prayer last night. It was a Sikh prayer. My apologies. They're all the same. They all look the same to me. I'm an American. It was bad when they had a Sikh prayer to some pagan deity. That was bad. They shouldn't do that. It was very good when they had a prayer to St. Michael the Archangel. That is very good. They should do that. Can you imagine? The RNC had a prayer to St. Michael the Archangel. And you're blackpilling? St. Michael heard that prayer. All right. Vibe shift time. Picanona says there could be porn stars at the RNC, but Sam Britton won't be in Trump's administration. One is a rally, the other is governance. Don't let Semiagog know that you said governance. I've been I don't want him coming after me, so I've been doing my best to work it out of my vocabulary, because I think his point about it is good. But yes, that's correct. Josiah says the propaganda story is simple. They encourage their freaks to target you, and they'll let them take their shot. Javier Oliva says, Mr. Whitlock speaks truth. Ugly, ugly truth, but truth nonetheless. All right, so Naval Ravikant. I've got great respect for this man. I've followed him for years now. He had a major influence on me. And he is absolutely part of the Gray Tribe PayPal Mafia contingent that is very sympathetic to many of our perspectives. He says, Twitter is upstream of politicians, journalists, and influencers. Elon freed the bird and made it a fair fight. And he shared this article from Marginal Revolution, Tyler Cowen, talking about the changes in vibes. Why did they happen? We're going to read through this because it's a good one. This was written 2 days ago. Clearly it has happened, and it has been accelerated and publicized by the Biden failings in the attempted Trump assassination. But it was already underway. If you need a single unambiguous sign of it, I would cite MSNBC pulling off Morning Joe for a morning for fear they would say something nasty about Trump. Another way to put it is that Trump was a highly vulnerable, defeated president facing numerous legal challenges and indeed an actual felony conviction. Yet he now stands as a clear favorite in the next election. In conceptual terms, how exactly did that happen? I had been thinking it would be a good cognitive test to ask people why they think the vibes have changed and then to grade their answers for intelligence, insight, and intellectual honesty. For instance, I used to read people arguing Trump is popular because of racism. But now that view is pretty clearly refuted, even if you think, as I do, that racism has some marginal impact on his support. Or other people have attributed the development to polarization. Whether or not you agree with the polarization thesis, it begs the question here, as we could be polarized with Trump as a big underdog. In any case, thought I should start this process by offering my answers. Here they are in a series of bullet points. 1. Trump and his team understand that we now live in a world of social media. Only a modest part of the Democratic establishment has mastered the same. 2. The Trumpian right, whether you agree with it or not, has been more intellectually alive and vital than the progressive left, at least during the last 5 years, maybe more. Being fully on the outs, those people were more free to be creative, noting that I am not equating creative with being correct. 3. The deindustrialization of America has mattered more than people expected at first and has had longer legs in terms of its impact on public opinion. I would say this one is squarely in the mainstream account of the matter. 4. Many Trumpian and MAGA messages have been more in vibe with the negative contagion effects of our recent times. He's linking to another article of his about an overly simple model of positive and negative contagion written on July 4th. The Democrats made a big bet that trying to raise the status of blacks would be popular, but at best they had mixed results. Some part of this failing was due to racists, some part due to immigrants with their own concerns, and some part due simply to the unpopularity of the message. 6. The ongoing feminization of society has driven more and more men, including black and Latino men, into the Republican camp. The Democratic Party became too much the party of unmarried women. 7. The Obama administration brought, to some degree, both the reality and perception of being ruled by the intellectual class. People didn't like that. Democrats and leftists are in fact less happy as people than conservatives are on average. Americans noticed this, if only subconsciously. 9. The relentlessly egalitarian message of Democrats is not so popular, and furthermore, since every claim must have messengers, it translates in lived practice into an I am better than you all are vibe. Americans noticed this, if only subconsciously. 10. The woke gambit has proven deeply unpopular. 11. Trans support has not been a winning issue for Democrats, but it is hard for them to let it go. Each of these things individually could be like an entire book. You could parse all of these points for months. And I think he's making a good point here that it's not any one thing here. It's all of these things. All of these things together have been playing a role. Immigration at the border has in fact spun out of control, and that has been a key Trump issue from the beginning of his campaign. And I write this as a person who is very pro-immigration. You can imagine how the immigration skeptics feel. Higher education has been a traditional Democratic stronghold, and it remains one. Yet its clout and credibility have fallen significantly in the last few years. Tyler Cowen is coming from the urbane, rootless, cosmopolitan culture perspective. But he's good faith and sincere and honest enough to recognize things like, despite the fact he's very pro-immigration, he recognizes that the immigration situation is completely untenable. He's not a rabid ideologue about this. This is the gray tribe. I have this preference, but I recognize that these radical ideologues that we're going to hear more about from Eric Weinstein in a minute, that these radical rabid ideologues are not people that we can coexist with. I may agree with them in principle, but they're insane people. I agree. I may disagree with you in principle, but you are sane people, and I want to live with you. I would rather live with people I disagree with in principle who are sane than those who I agree with in principle who are insane. Perseverating on the fact that we disagree in principle is juvenile. There will be a time for that conversation. That time's not now. The Democrats made a big mistake going after big tech. It didn't cost them many votes, rather money and social capital, which matter far more than votes. Money and social capital creates votes. Trying to retain votes at the expense of money and social capital is a loser's gambit. Big tech, most of all Facebook, was the Girardian sacrifice for the Trump victory in 2016, and all the Democrats achieved from that was a hollowing out of their own elite base. And as go the elites, so go everyone else. Various developments in Afghanistan, Ukraine, and Israel did not help the Democratic cause. Inflation was very high and real borrowing rates went up sharply. This is true whether or not you think it is the fault of Biden or Trump would have done better. Crypto came under attack. The pandemic story is complicated. There's an understatement of the century. And its politics would require a post of its own. But I don't think it helped the Democrats, most of all because they ended up owning many of the longer-lasting school closures. This is anybody who says, who wants to talk about, oh, Trump locked down, Trump did this, Trump with the vaccine, Trump with whatever else. You're a fucking moron. Shut up. Make the Democrats own this. By not making them own this, you only run cover for them. The exact facts on the ground in the realm of political rhetoric are tangential. I'm going to sneeze again. Apologies. And we haven't even gotten to defund the police, the recurring rise of anti-Semitism on the left, and at least a half dozen other matters. 16. In very simple terms, you might say the Democrats have done a lot to make themselves unpopular and not had much willingness to confront that. Their own messages make this hard to face up to since they're supposed to be better people. You might add to this, 17, Trump is funny. He's one of the great American comics, in fact. And 18, Trump acts like a winner. Americans like this, and his response to the failed assassination attempt drove this point home. And 19, Biden's recent troubles and the realization that he and his team had been running a con at least as big as the Trump one. It has become a trust issue, not only an age or cognition issue. And trust is very hard to win back. This is part of why I believe that we're watching the death of the DNC as a political entity. I'll hedge this that perhaps the DNC just gets completely taken over and co-opted the way the RNC is being right now. You're seeing a flushing out of the old guard and an installation of the new guard that are going in a completely different direction. The DNC may end up being the vehicle for that, but it's the fact that it has the same name and is perhaps the same corporate entity will be besides the fact. It may be that the Democrat-Republican divide is now Lindy, like it's been around for so long that it's not going to go anywhere. But functionally, the DNC as the DNC for the last however long is dying. It's going away. On the other side of the ledger, you might argue, as do many intelligent people, that the Democrats are better at technocracy, and also that Democrats are more respectful of traditional political processes, especially transitions after elections. I'm not here to debate those issues, which tells me he doesn't agree. But he has to make his token, he's got to maintain his cultural status. I know many MAGA supporters are not convinced, most of all on the latter. I'll simply note that, on the minds of many Americans, those factors do not necessarily outweigh numbers 1 through 19. And there you go. Addendum. Of course there was and is, got to have the token addendum. Of course there was and is plenty wrong with Trump and the Trump administration, but the purpose here is not to compare Biden and Trump. Rather, it is to see why the Democrats are not doing better. If your response to that question is to cite reasons why the Democrats are better than Trump, well, then you are exactly part of the problem. And I would say a corollary to that would be, if your response is to cite reasons why Trump is no better than the Democrats, then you are exactly part of the problem. Derek Thompson says, something feels deeply true about this Tyler Cowen post, even though I have no idea how I could prove it or if it can be proven or what it actually portends. The political cultural vibe shift of the last 3 weeks just feels quite immense. This is a writer for The Atlantic, a podcast host on Ringer, Mondays on NPR, co-writing a book about abundance. This is not our guy. But he is open to being our guy. It reminds me weirdly of the months after the 2016 election, when it felt like the entire non-conservative commentariat became quasi-socialist at the same time, but obviously in the opposite direction. I'm not making a prediction, I'm just noting a feeling. I feel it, Tyler does too, and my guess is that more than a few other people feel the same way. So this is culturally, this guy is in the heart of the regime, and he is aware of it. He notices it. And he's not afraid of it. He's fascinated by it. Fascination is a fascinating phenomenon. I talked yesterday about the moment that came in January of 2021, where there was a bunch of different competing narratives happening, a whole bunch of stuff going on behind the scenes and out in the open, and everything came up to a decision point. Everyone walked to the edge and then waited to see who was going to go. And then in lockstep, everybody just all fell in around the same narrative at the same time. And just everything was just shoved aside and everyone moved forward. This wasn't an explicitly coordinated conspiracy. This was an organic decision or it was a power evaluation. Human beings have a sense of power, and they recognized, they made a bet on who had the most institutional power to enforce the narrative that everyone was settling on. And they correctly identified it was the interests behind Biden. So they just settled right in around it. One of the most interesting people who settled in around that was Bibi Netanyahu, who has been reportedly trying to get back in Trump's good graces. But Trump, the man who is notoriously a grudge holder, reportedly said after Netanyahu endorsed Joe Biden, quote, "Fuck him." And since then, Netanyahu has been trying to get back in his good graces. And it was reported last night that he was supposed to fly to the U.S., and his flight was canceled at the last minute. I suspect this may have something to do with what's going on with Biden right now. And it may also be that he has just been given the finger by the Trump campaign. I don't know. We'll see. I do know that Netanyahu and Kushner have been together for a very long time. And Kushner is at least not explicitly a part of the administration at this point. And it seems that there's good reasons for that. Like substantive reasons. It's not just kayfabe. So when he says he's describing one of these similar moments where the entire non-conservative commentariat became quasi-socialist at the same time. When Trump was elected, blew everyone's minds when he was inaugurated, and people were like, "Oh, I can't believe this." You had all the non-conservative commentariat instantly in lockstep pivoted to, the squad. That was the point at which the DNC just overnight remade themselves and brought in all of these radicals to use as their shock troops, decided to start pandering. They needed to minimize the effect of Bernie and Elizabeth Warren and AOC, that entire contingent. They brought them in to begin using them as to pander. We had the story we talked about yesterday where Netanyahu, that's right, I forgot about that. Netanyahu. We had that story we touched on yesterday where, what was I going to say? Netanyahu got me off. Almost there. And the Ezra Klein interview, where he was describing how he's talking to these elected officials, Democrat elected officials who are privately behind the scenes or spokespeople for them, are saying, I don't know why you guys actually think that Trump is a threat to democracy. Like, he clearly, obviously isn't. And if you guys still think he is, then you're kind of out to lunch. Which shows the extent to which the actual power brokers behind the scenes have been doing this cynically, which everyone knew. But it really puts a fine point on it, that they've been doing this cynically. And the libs, the shit libs, are irate about this. They have never been more demoralized about their party. I'm tapped into some of these little subcultures, and they're freaking the fuck out about Trump, but they are completely black-pilled about the DNC. Because they're realizing now the extent to which they've been trained to become true believers in this cause, that the people who were promoting it didn't even believe in themselves. That's a loss of trust that's going to be very difficult to recreate. Which is why I think the DNC, in order to continue being a political entity in any sense, is going to have to completely remake itself. To the extent that it may even require the creation of a new party. There's so much institutional inertia against that, but it's happened in the past. We haven't always had the Democrats and the Republicans. It's been 150 years or more. Was it the Whigs, I think, were like the last alternative party that really held any sway? So whether it's the creation of a new party or just the recreation of the Democrats, in either way, it's going to become a completely different political entity. And I don't believe it's going to, I'll make a prediction that it's not going to hold power. It's not going to hold power for probably at least 2 presidential administrations. Obviously, many different things can happen, but I do believe that in order to convince you of my honesty and my sincerity, I need to make some predictions every now and then and stick to them. And if I'm proven wrong, then I'll say, yep, I was proven wrong. But for now, my prediction is we're going to get a Republican domination of the political system. The Republican Party is now the inner party and is going to be for at least this next administration and the one after that, and maybe the one after that. All right. Vibe shift is done. Do me a favor and hit the like button. We got 93 watching and 49 likes. Hit the like button. You can also join, become a channel member, join the King Pilled. That's one way you can support the channel. Allow me to keep doing this. I'm enjoying doing this, and I want to keep doing this. It's becoming very, very time consuming, and it's very enjoyable, but I need to be able to feed the family as well. So if you would like me to keep doing this, please do support the show. You can send a super chat. You can become a channel member, become a member of the King Pilled for $5 a month. Or the best way to support the show, and the way you get the most out of it, is to join the King Pilled Discord. Go to kingpilled.com. We've got a great group of people in there. Like half the people in the chat are in the King Pilled Discord. So if you enjoy the chat and you want more of this, the King Pilled Discord is the place to be. And if you have any other ways that you would like to support the show that aren't currently available, let me know. I'm going to create some of those alternative means. And we've got something in the workings in the background that I think is going to be a massive hit. This has been a pretty brutally busy couple of weeks, so it's hard to get this stuff off the ground. But I think you guys are really going to enjoy what's coming. All right, last 2 threads here. We check the time. All right. So Eric Weinstein. Eric Weinstein is a very interesting figure. He's very polarizing to me. Cooper and I were talking about this morning, that once upon a time I was a huge fan of Eric Weinstein. I was an early adopter of the IDW. I was very much into that. And that was basically the time where I was transitioning through. And so I spent a period of time deep into the IDW world, which is where I came across Naval Ravikant. And really, that's what ultimately, I think, positioned me to have an awareness of the gray tribe culture, to pick up on this PayPal Mafia thing when it started happening. If I trace it back, it was, Jordan Peterson, Eric Weinstein, Joe Rogan, all of that. So on one hand, I have a measure of respect for Eric Weinstein, for his mind. I think he's incredibly intelligent. I also think that he's an absolute madman and has done some really despicable things. So, yeah, my opinion is very torn on him. I enjoyed watching some of the clips I saw of him talking to Terrence Howard. It was, you got to give the man credit when he does things worthy of credit. And I thought his conversation, the way he treated Terrence Howard, busting his balls and being hard on him, but doing it with respect and giving him sincere critiques and everything, I thought that was great. Anyways, he makes some very interesting points here, and he's also uniquely positioned to have some weight behind some of the observations that he's making here. So I think this is worthwhile. He says, one of the most important forces shaping the current U.S. presidential election is not being sufficiently discussed. Communism. It is. So, yes, we have the tribe member who is signaling about communism. Because the Democratic Party does not view itself in any way as communist, you can't have a discussion about the role that communism is playing in support for Donald Trump. How can a Wall Street-friendly party favored by large institutions be communist? Okay, begin by just stipulating that this is true for the sake of argument, whether or not you agree with it. All right, so we're suspending disbelief. Let's hear his argument. For the moment, imagine that you see all DEI as Marxist and Maoist. Imagine that you see AOC and the Squad as communists. Regardless of what communism is, imagine that you see this. That you see DEI inherently as Marxist and Maoist. Imagine that what you see in terms of social justice or wokeness or postmodernism or gender-affirming healthcare or Palestinian genocide or Soros Open Society initiatives or progressive DAs or anti-whiteness or defund the police is straight-up precursor to violent revolutionary Marxism. Don't have to imagine too hard here. We're not having to suspend disbelief too much. Which also might tell you who he's talking to. The people crossing over to the cause of Trump with enormous checkbooks see this exactly the way I have described in the above paragraph. You can pretend that this isn't so. Maybe they won't admit it to you or do so in public. But the stark truth of it is that what is driving a lot of surprising support for Trump and the Republicans has nothing to do with either. It's not all about Trump or the GOP. It's about Marx, Mao, Stalin, and Lenin. It is the idea that revolutionary Marxism is a dangerous brain cancer that is always trying to get a foothold among the weak. The idea that is everywhere is this. Quote, the Democratic Party of the United States thought that they could play with rebranded revolutionary Marxists as if the new communism were merely a form of socially conscious pro-market, pro-democracy liberalism, when it is instead a communist Trojan horse philosophy. It has as its aim destabilizing and destroying our culture, the United States, and then the world. This isn't a culture war. It is a takeover of the United States by hardcore revolutionary neo-Marxists who have come for your newspapers, universities, public schools, and your children. The leaders who think they can reach out to progressive voters do not realize they are dancing with a devil who will outplay them. Does that sound silly to you? Great. Glad to hear it. And if so, you have absolutely no idea what is being discussed by many of the world's smartest, most powerful, and most influential people. Constantly. Why is this confusing? Well, no one I know sees Joe Biden as communist. They don't even see the Democratic Party leadership as communist. They view the party as opportunistic and naive in thinking that Democrats can allow violent pathological revolutionaries into the big blue tent with a simple coat of blue paint and a bargain basement rebrand to deconstruct the patriarchy and decolonize, defund, and otherwise reform our society while quietly waiting for their real moment. I'm sorry if this sounds funny to some of you who can't imagine opposing Biden for these reasons. If so, it just means you have no clue, as in zero, as to what is going on in a pivotal part of the shift towards Trump. I just wanted to bring this up because it is barely being discussed in mainstream media. It's the communism, stupid. So BLM Chicago said, that is all, that is it. I stand with Palestine. This symbolism. That's what he screenshotted and was talking about. So Kofafianon responds to this. Thomas Query says, Eric is right about this one. And you'll notice this is some very high verbal IQ stuff going on here. He's not saying necessarily this is what is happening. He's saying the people who are throwing their weight behind Trump believe this is what's happening. And if you can read between the lines here, you know who he's talking about. The type of people he's talking about, given his history. Kofefianon, Powerful Mutual, says, as someone who's been doing the work of analyzing this and to whose position Eric Weinstein is coming around to publicly here, I'll offer this correction. This isn't about the D's being secret communists. It's about the current strain of their ideology being the descendant of the same intellectual and social force attractor as communism. Communism relied on a bunch of assumptions that no one holds any longer because they've been disproven in a million ways, through the 20th century, but even more so in the 21st century. There are a broad array of strategies for gaining power in non-monarchical systems. Communism is one of them. Wokeness/progressivism is another closely related one. These strategies have enough in common with how they gain power, through envy, and how they police their friend-enemy distinctions that their ultimate outcomes are likely to be similar. Mass murder until the fanatics that win internal power struggles on their side are brought to heel by a Stalin-like figure. All liberalism, quote, does is serve to disarm the opponents of that group. Liberalism cannot have a stable hold on power. I think this is exactly correct. He highlights the notorious Mystery Grove tweet. Reminder, communism is when ugly, deformed freaks make it illegal to be normal, then rob and or kill all successful people out of petty resentment and cruelty. The ideology is all just window dressing. So what I think is really valuable here about this observation that Eric Weinstein is making is he's pointing out, whether you believe this or not yourself personally, which I know this is preaching to the choir with this audience, but he's pointing this out to his people. He's saying whether or not you believe this, the people in power, the people who are making these power plays, they believe this with all their heart, soul, and mind. They recognize the existential nature of this. This is not just a cynical power play. They recognize the existential nature of this, and they're very well in tuned to what's going on behind the scenes and what it is that they are up against, which then will also inform the direction that they want things to go. We have fully entered the post-liberal era. It'll take a while for it to be fully instantiated, and I suspect that we still have a major conflict, much worse than anything we've gone to. I suspect that we have a major conflict ahead of us still. Probably maybe as early as 10 years out, probably more like 50. There's going to be an alignment that precedes it. But that's what's coming. And we have patrons who recognize the same thing that we do. We have potential patrons. They're offering to be patrons. We've been crying out for patronage. We've been crying out for powerful political people who will see us as human beings worth advocating for, and not simply economic widgets, or even worse, non-humans who need to be expunged. I'll take it. Hey, they don't want to kill me. That's a nice upgrade. And if that's not sufficient for you, you don't actually appreciate the magnitude of the situation. If you're trying to negotiate with your patron in this moment because you're so black-pilled, you're just a fucking idiot. The black-pilling is performative. You don't actually believe things are as bad as they are. You're like the guy who's buying waterfront territory while claiming that the earth is that the sea levels are going to rise 10 feet over the next 10 years or whatever. You're the same person acting the same way. If you are actually black-pilled, if you're actually very pessimistic about where we are right now and what is ahead of us, you will accept a life preserver if it's thrown to you, even if it's a shitty one. It's better than no life preserver whatsoever. If you're in the water floating around with sharks surrounding you, and some pirates come by and they throw you a life preserver, you're going to grab that life preserver and let them pull you on board. And you're going to sort out whatever differences of opinion you have with the pirates once you're pulled out of the water full of sharks. Someone who wants to sit there and say, oh, well, I would prefer someone else come rescue me. They deserve to be eaten by sharks, and they will be. Thomas Query says, Eric is right about this one. Prior to that, I was always a Democrat voter. Well, welcome. Someone will have to tell the black leaders who are hoping for equity and reparations that it ain't happening, and that's going to be what pushes them over the edge. Yeah, I suspect that some of them may have the political sense to figure that out, and some of them will not. That's the thing about the people who are like craven power seekers, is they're often the first ones to move with the times because they're the ones who are tuned into it. Like, that's the whole thing they're doing. They're just looking for power, and they're waiting to see when the power shift happens and then figuring out how to get themselves on board. So if you're seeking power, maybe behave as the craven power seekers do. And when somebody offers you a life preserver, don't think, oh, what are they going to do to me when they pull me on board? Think, what am I going to do to them when they pull me on board? Don't be a pussy. Ian Carroll says, you have a dono chat type thing in the works so YouTube doesn't rob you of donos. That's a good idea. I should probably do something like that. Maybe that or entropy or something along those lines. I need to get these sorts of things set up. I need to get a Bitcoin wallet and all these other things so that you guys, if you want to contribute, you have other ways of doing so. Right now, it's a bandwidth thing. So anyone who wants to help out in any way, we are happy to take it. We're scaling things up over here, and we're working on a... Holy shit. I don't know if you guys heard that, but there is a thunderstorm apparently right now. That was loud. Yeah, we're scaling up a lot of stuff right now, and we're operating on a bare bones budget and infrastructure thing here. So any support that you guys can provide is very much appreciated. Again, for now, the best way to support is to go to kingpill.com and sign up to become a member of the Discord. All right. Last thing on the docket today, and then I'll get you guys out of here. I got to go get this card house set up. Luke Weinhagen, insurers and deciders, the women in politics issue. So real quick, we'll show you the you guys know this picture. This is his algorithm gaming. You put a picture in the tweet, does better for the algorithm, and it's relevant to what he's talking about. Insurers and deciders, the women in politics issue. In a healthy society / civilization, these are the same entities, the insurers and the deciders. As they separate, and to the degree they separate, societal civilizational dysfunction manifests until eventually no insurance is left and the society / civilization collapses. You might see this as the managers. When the managers become the deciders and they depart from the insurers or the enforcers, then things go down. Josiah, I'm voting for Trump because I know just how bad things really are. Checkmate. That's a good one. Yep. Thanks for dropping in, KevBot33. We'll see you later. Some framing. In World War II, the Royal Air Force was losing lots of planes to enemy fire over mainland Europe. They turned to the Statistical Research Group at Columbia University to assess what could be done. The SRS recorded bullet holes in planes that made it back, creating a heat map. The obvious impulse based on these heat maps was to armor those areas receiving the most damage. One of the group's members, mathematician Abraham Wald, advised to instead reinforce those areas clear of hits on the hit maps. His reasoning: the planes used to determine where hits occurred were the ones that survived and made it back. Those hits were survivable. It is the areas where their maps showed no data that represents the planes that did not make it back. The impulse to armor the obvious hit zones represents survivorship bias. When we focus on the obvious problem, we often miss underlying causal contributors. I view the collapse of society / civilizations much the same way. Generalizations required to articulate the broad dynamic. Depending on how we measure, there have been anywhere from a few dozen to a few hundred distinct societies / civilizations in recorded history. Nearly all of them have collapsed, ended, transformed into something completely wiped from existence, or transformed into something different enough from what they emerged as to no longer be the same society civilization. And across those society civilizations, only a small fraction have granted women political to any real degree, probably political freedom. So when I look at this problem, I have to think, maybe it is not women or the feminine having political franchises that represent what causes the collapse of societies and civilizations. It certainly looks like women in politics must be the primary as we examine our own society civilization. The primary vectors of undermining can largely be traced back to changes in politics and policy emerging after women's suffrage, both in the US and across the West. The political engagement of the feminine lights up the hit map of societal civilizational hits. Women in politics represents the obvious problem that must be reinforced, right? Yes. And no. You see, I don't use our society civilization as the representative sample for the problem. I add our hit map to the data from as many other society civilizations as I know well enough to use as samples. As I mentioned earlier, most of these did not have women engaged in politics. So while women in politics may be our problem, it seems unlikely it is the problem. So what he's saying here is that the women in politics thing is the actual hit marks. But what's missing here is something caused all these other societies and civilizations to collapse. They didn't have women in politics, and yet they collapsed. So we have women in politics, and we're collapsing. So it seems that the women in politics thing has something to do with it. But if we're taking all of the data that's available to us, it seems that it can't be the single determining factor. Instead, what I see is anytime those making directional decisions for a society or civilization are different from those ensuring a society or civilization, that civilization begins to fall apart. The women in politics thing is a manifestation of this phenomenon, but the deeper phenomenon is much more important, which is why simply getting women out of politics will not solve the problem. Because the women in politics problem is a manifestation of a deeper problem. If your insurers, those responsible for paying the costs of decisions, and the decision makers separate the decisions themselves, and the decision makers, oh my God, typos. If your insurers, those responsible for paying the costs of decisions, and the decision makers separate the decisions themselves, lose their incentives to support the well-being of the society civilization. Okay, if your insurers, those responsible for paying the cost of decisions, and the decision makers separate, the decisions themselves lose their incentives to support the well-being of the society/civilization. Our founders recognized this dynamic. It was voiced in their primary complaint, taxation without representation. They were held accountable as insurers of the decisions affecting their society civilization, but were not afforded a corresponding role as decision makers. We recognize this when we point to the ideal of the ruler of last resort being embodied in the same entity as the insurer of last resort. It's why monarchies, at least those that maintain these dynamics, worked throughout history, and why our founders in the US set our government up specifically to create a governing body serving this role. They're trying to decentralize the monarchy into the executive branch. Success has led us to the opposite conditions today, where the decision-making is in the hands of people who pay no costs for the decisions they make, detached from any investment into the society civilization, extractive and parasitic, consumptive. Adding even more weight to the feminine expressions, the consumptive expressions are the source of the problem. My argument is that dependence, not women, produces the problem. That's the separation of decision from insurance. That the separation of decision from insurance is the underlying cause. Free riding, cost evasion, responsibility evasion, accountability evasion, all just separation of decision from insurance. It's the women accounts for our societal civilizational collapse. It's the evasion accounts for all societal civilizational collapse. We see evasion so strongly associated with women in the West because agrarianism began the separation of women from natural pressures early and effectively. Removed from them the adaptive pressure to express the abstract responsibility required to ensure society and civilization, guaranteeing we get exactly to where we are not once women are fully engaged in politics. The West is a society/civilization built from the ground up to separate children first and women as the caretakers of children second from the costs of direct exposure to nature. So a civilization built from the ground up to first separate children from the costs of direct exposure to nature. And then next, separating women from exposure from the costs of the direct exposure to nature. Which there's a nobility to this, that you want to protect the women, you want to protect the children. You need to ensure that they survive. But part of ensuring that they survive is also exposing them to the costs of direct exposure to nature. A social structure that ensures they are unlikely to become insurers, while simultaneously our high trust bias compels us to extend them the responsibility as decision makers. But again, and this, the problem is not women inherently, as it looks obvious to be, but the separation between insurer and decision maker. The blank spots on our societal civilizational heat map. When my peers frequently observe that many societal or civilizational problems can find their origin in women's suffrage, they are not incorrect. When they argue that removing women from politics will solve the problem, the survivorship bias occurs. Because of the way the West has developed and evolved, women in our society's civilization have become the primary vector of the underlying cause, but they are not inherently the underlying cause. If we solve the feminine influence in politics issue, we may delay collapse, making us even more blind to the true threat in the process. Kind of like the people who are like, no, we need to have the collapse now because if Trump is elected, then it's going to revive people's belief in the system and it's just going to persist, make things persist longer, which I think is retarded. I think it's bad argumentation in that particular instance. He's making the same point, and I think he's exactly right in this instance. The thunder is really kicking up out there. If I drop off all of a sudden, it's because the power went out. And this is the end of it here, so you won't be missing anything. If it drops off, I'll just kick off myself. But as history overwhelmingly shows us, masculinity itself is no safeguard of society and civilization. If our society or civilization permits the separation of cost accruing from cost paying, decision making from ensuring, we lose our society or civilization, no matter who. The upside is that the fix is the same no matter the who, no matter the cost, no separation of cost making and cost paying, no political power for the dependent, any dependent. So if you're a dependent, you have no political power. You do not get to be a decision maker if you are not an insurer, if you do not bear the consequences of the decisions that you make or that you participate in making. This is good rhetoric. This is highlighting again the trajectory that we're taking. Because I don't think this guy here is, he's not exactly a radical. Definitely our guy. Founder of Core Human Competence, fellow of Applied Theory at NLI, personal defense readiness instructor, author of The Primal Primer. So, the fix is the same no matter the who, no separation of cost making and cost paying. This is the restoration of accountability. And this is rhetoric. This explanation in this way resonates significantly with the Gray Tribe people. The Gray Tribe people are willing to sign on to some pretty radical stuff if you can deliver it to them via autism. They're engineers. They have an engineer's brain. And now they're ready to set their mind to social engineering. And obviously there's a danger in that. We're getting even more effective social engineers. But in many cases, they're also much more honest. And they're openly signaling to us that they would like to ally with us and work to socially engineer an America that serves us. So we have an opportunity to align with them and to benefit from the moves that they make. You just got to stop blackpilling. 5 very fake Canadian dollars from Slosher. Thank you, man. He says, liberalism is popular because it allows individuals to gain status by being nice, but the costs are a tragedy of the commons, immigration and welfare. Exactly right. Rick Farwell, Starship Troopers, only those who serve in combat can vote or serve in the state. I would mind that. All right. Well, I am going to skedaddle out of here now. I appreciate you guys showing up. This has been a good show. I appreciate all the commentary in the chat. You guys are great. This has been a lot of fun, and I'm looking forward to continuing this. Have a great weekend. I hope you spend some time with your family, get to do some fun stuff, enjoy the vibes, and remember, no fucking blackpilling. Like the stream, subscribe to the channel, join the Discord, kingpilled.com. Follow me on Twitter @RealKingPilled, and we will see you guys on Monday morning with another episode of the